Here lies the body of the good girl, the one that learned to self-abandon as an act of survival. Born before memory, this mask was developed as an anchor for peace, others' peace, as it suffocated all that grew from her own soul. She wore the label too much around her neck, the weight of others' expectations causing her to hunch so she could only see how close she was to the ground. She hoped by being good enough, she would finally earn the love of all the people who claimed to care about her. But all that was left was a sour taste of neglect when she needed them. Her voice was valued only when it was being used for others, her needs often neglected, her desires robbed of a voice. We are gathered here today not to shame her, but to celebrate how well we survived under her tenure. We recognize that survival was key at this stage of our lives. But now we realize to live is to live a full spectrum of humanity. To bite and have claws. Imperfection is not bad. We will not die from being bit. We are worthy of love in our wholeness. It is time to lay the good girl to rest. She is tired, and so am I. Hi, welcome to this episode of Behind the Sacred with me, Read Oracle, where I discuss my relationship with divinity in the hope I can offer you a blueprint of how to relate to the divine. Today, we're going to be talking about the good girl as an archetype. And we're specifically going to go through my recent engagement with this part of myself and how this is specifically flared up as I've been engaging with being seen, right? I've been having a lot of conversations recently with friends around stories of what it means to be seen. And it's so interesting because I've realized that what's been happening is a shedding of old stories, specifically stories that really encapsulate the first 30 years of my life, where I was severely neglected in mirrors. And therefore, it meant that a lot of my upbringing or a lot of my kind of becoming was looking at trying to find myself in a lot of warped reflections. And I, and it was, this is such a painful experience. And if anyone has ever had, I think if you're neurodivergent or you have something that makes you feel very separate from other people, it's probably something you can relate to, which is this idea of not being able to see yourself in others. And it feels like a really, really isolating experience. And it does, and that is my law, that is my story. It's this person that has been extremely alone for so long. And it's very desperate for connection and love and to be seen, like not even just to be seen in like intimate relationship, but to be seen on a stage. To I have a desire to be to to have a spotlight of some form, and therefore the way that I've been brought up or the experiences that I've had have meant that I have almost almost I almost have a phobia against it, right? And these conversations I've been having have been an alchemization, an alchemy of that experience, of those experiences. So, and it's so interesting because I'll be having these conversations, and a lot of the time they sound like, ah, wow, no one understands me, wow, wow. Um, why can't anyone see me? Why is it I feel so alone? Why is it I don't fit in? Like a version of a story that doesn't actually fit into this era that I'm moving into, especially as someone who's just like started a podcast. It could actively see people engaging with it, has regular proof that there is an opposite experience happening to the one that I am feeling and the one that is moving through me so viscerally. And it's like straddling these two existences, straddling these two worlds. And it's been really, really interesting because I realized that I was actually going through a really, really, really important process in the birth of this new version of me, which is simultaneously the death of that version. And the realization that I could no longer carry on the stories that I had once had about myself. They were no longer able to come forward because if they did, they would be in complete conflict with my reality or the reality that I wanted, and therefore would cause some form of tension and friction. And I don't want that. I don't want that. I want to simultaneously honor my story, but also move forward, being able to script something that honors my experience more. So I think what this episode is is me actively creating a space to say goodbye to the stories that made me feel like I could never be in front of you right now. Because just by virtue of me being here, I am showing you that that story no longer exists. And I think I want to demonstrate that because I want others to also start to consider what it means to let go of a story, what it means to actually put something to bed whilst also honoring what it has done up until this point. Because the acceptance and love of ourselves, I think, is the easiest way to heal. I think sometimes healing modalities, if they're too clinical or too logical, really miss what it means to be held in the process of healing. So if I can be witness in this and create space to witness myself by myself, because the most important person that has to witness me is me. But because I'm someone that also wants to be seen and I'm also changing that story, I am also allowing that to happen in a more public environment. So a lot of the fear that has been coming up and also fear as well as stark realization. So a stark realization that then leads to a fear has brought me back to this idea of being good, right? And this almost clinical way that we can sometimes show up in the world to be loved when true intimacy is to be seen in our wholeness. And so, what I mean by that is, I had this realization that for me to show up here, I would have to be flawed. And this is like almost like is it a fallacy? Like, or I'm obviously flawed and everyone can see my flaws. People will be able to see your flaws. But whatever reality that I have created in which I am performing this good girl, there is no space for that. So I'm moving in this world with a mask that tells me that I am here to be of service. I am here to be kind. I am here to be good. And I am here to heal the world or do all the, I don't know, like do all these things that kind of align with this patriarchal white supremacist idea of what it means to one, be a woman and to be spiritual or holy in this instance. And I think the realization that to be seen was to be seen as flawed freaked me out. It absolutely freaked me out because I genuinely was like, "Oh, so people are going to have to engage with what it means with the worst parts of myself, the parts that I've kept hidden because to show those parts would have meant sudden death in my psyche. To be the person that was had desires, was greedy, was insatiable, like all those things that I consider very, very natural parts of being a human, specifically being someone who is channeling the feminine aspect of God into the world. Those parts were even more needed, and yet I was terrified of them because prior to this, the only way that I could survive was by pandering to a system that refused to see me in that wholeness. And so there's this weird thing happening where I'm trying to be good, failing by virtue of being human, and also because the criteria of what good is, it goes against my nature. And also good is made up. It's completely a man-made concept. Uh, so already the odds are against me. And then I'm showing up here knowing that for me to actually demonstrate to you how I became who I am, I have to show you how messy it was and how many mistakes I made, and how that still doesn't take away from how holy I am. Because if we're not working within a white supremacist framework of what is pure, purity being the concentration of an energy as opposed to good, that means that, yeah, that means that I have to show you messy. I have to show you the messiness that comes with being holy. and and because the work of distillation, which is, yeah, distillation, is refining something and moving something through a process over and over again until you know that, until you know it, until you can see it, until it reflects back to you who you are or what something is. And I often say that I'm somewhere between the siren and the saint because it's about inviting the parts of self that have been banished back into the what it means to be holy. People recognize the saint as holy, but they forget that the siren also has holy purpose. Magdalene is a perfect example of someone who was banished by Christianity despite being the apostle of the apostles. So someone who was seen in high regard by Jesus himself as well as the apostles, and yet was banished because she represented a more embodied form of the faith, and that was not aligned with a patriarchal system of Christianity. And I think as I show up in this space, I have to be honest about who I am and how I've got here and the things that I've done that are the thing is, it's so hard because you'd be like, "Oh, the things I did were maybe bad," but actually, like, are are they? Are they, or are they just the refining of myself? Did I just refine myself? Do you know what I mean? Did I just? And the thing is, like, the more you deny yourself, the more likely this is when shadow and light comes in. The more likely shadow aspects show up and really, really show themselves because you're unwilling to look at them dead in the eye and say, "Oh, that's that part of me that I'm not comfortable with. Because of that, I'm going to shove it here, but it's going to show up in really, 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 really nefarious ways and get me in trouble. And it's so important to me that I I show up as a really, really responsible leader. I think I have been a victim of leaders that have not always been the most, I don't know, like had the most, because I don't even think it's negative, but they might have not had the purest intentions. That's what I would say. That they might not have had the purest intentions, and that's because they were on their own journey of the purification of their themselves, their spirit. And yet, because I've been victim to that, I fear always being the person that could also put people in that situation, because when you're in a position of power, you could always do that, right? So again, this is where the fear comes in of being seen, because it's like, if you see me, if I'm accountable, then that I have to be good. And then that freezes you in your tracks, because ultimately it's impossible to be above reproach, like, it's impossible. There's always going to be something about you that is, some people just, based on their system of morality, is bad, right? And again, there's certain things that collectively we all find bad, like child abuse, murder, SA, etc. But the you can fall into this trap of being a guru, and then having to push your humanity into a space where it can grow legs and become a demon, basically. I hope that metaphor makes sense. So when I talk about a good girl, when I talk about this good girl, I talk about someone who, in a spiritual sense, feels that they have to earn their right to a relationship with God. And this was something that I truly, truly, truly modeled, because I had grown up performing to be loved. And it's really important, as above, so below, that we are very aware of the fact that a lot of the ways that we navigate our relationships in the physical realm are also how we might approach the spiritual. So this is why you can see some people looking at God as their dad, or as their boss, or do you know what I mean? Like, having this relationship where there's almost a deference of self to a higher power, instead of an authority that comes from within and then relates to a divinity, right? And I was that person who did that for a very, very long time. And what that what that ended up doing was preventing me from really being loved and feeling the love. The love is, especially from the divine, is a given, but my ability to be able to receive it was capped, because I felt I had to earn it. And when I looked at my relationships in the material, I recognized that that was what I was playing out. I was playing out this thing, this behavior pattern of, if I was not of service to you, then how do I know that you love me? And then if you love me and I don't see that I've done anything to deserve it, there is this love that is in this vacuum that is not reaching me. And this is what we kind of talk about when we talk about receiving. Like, can you receive love? It's very likely that if you feel that you have to earn love, then you are unable to receive it, because love is not earned, right? And this is the same thing with the divine. So I had this moment where I was working specifically with Jesus. I'm a polytheist and I work with multiple gods. And at this time, I was working with Jesus because I think Jesus is a deity, works with the heart. Like he's very, very, very much uses technologies that engage the heart space. And I was praying to Jesus and I was like, why can I not find the kingdom of heaven, which is within me? And a voice inside of me said, it's because I'm a good girl. And it's like everything came. I don't know. I just had this moment. I was in bed and I just had this moment where I was like, oh, you are completely separated from yourself, from your God self, because you believe in being good. And I realized that to release myself from this, I was going to have to go back to a time when I had developed behaviors that of survival that were rooted in a complete abandonment of self for the other. And because I was raised Christian, one of the first things I did was I went and revisited the church because I was like, do you know what? I have to understand this. I have to understand where this came from. And through that experience, which was only last year, I began to engage with the Christian God and Jesus outside of the structure of religion and was able to read it from the deeply loving place that scripture comes from, specifically New Testament scripture. And there were so many times when I was engaging with those words, and I could hear how much authority was expected to us and how much we were expected to show up and how much we had to receive the love that was available to us. I think Jesus never made anyone work for anything. Do you know what I mean? If anything, the only thing he ever really wanted from us was faith. And I recognized within my journey that I had completely outsourced my power because I was performing what it meant to be good instead of trying to find the kingdom of heaven within myself or my connection to God, which was who I am. Who am I? Like I said, true spirituality is not being good, it's being whole. And finding ourselves and engaging with our true power means being with the parts that can really scare us and really bring us shame. And I think the fear of being seen for me comes from this idea that you're going to realize that how bad I am. And when I mean bad, how sharp my brain is, how much I laugh at other people, like how how much holiness can involve being a little trickster, or how sometimes I want to have two pieces of cake and your cake and all do you know what I mean? Like it's a completely all encompassing hunger for life to be a spiritual person. And if we are doing it within the collective and not stealing from other people and staying true to ourselves, that is holy. That is what is holy. So I feel like I'm here in front of you today to allow myself to give myself permission to be messy as I move forward. I tried to record once before this week and I really struggled because there were some parts of myself that weren't ready to be seen. And I was like, the tension was really difficult. And I realized, oh, that's because you need to reckon with this part of yourself. And here, and this is the result. The result is me coming here to lay the good girl to rest and to say to the to say to all parts of myself that they are holy they are accepted, they are I am willing to be in the process of distilling them to something pure and and alchemy for others. And yeah, like I hope that you hear that and it gives you a little bit of freedom to exhale and think, you know what, maybe I don't want to be good anymore. Maybe I want to invite the less desirable parts inside to show me their magic. And yes, some of those parts are scary, but I'm telling you, like for me, to emancipate my ancestors is to take the hardest parts of myself and give them space to show me their beauty, to show me their purpose in the ecosystem that is my psyche. And I remember I was in the spring, it's summer now, but in the springtime, all the flowers in my garden, in my community garden that I work in, all came out to bloom. And we had been toiling for autumn and winter to make this garden ready for spring. And at the same time that all those beautiful flowers were were blooming, so were the weeds. And when you are weeding in a garden, to make sure that you do not take away the beauty that is also there, you have to be so, so, so gentle. And this is this process to there is a desire to bloom and show myself to you, but there's also a desire to really, really be tender with the parts of myself that are very, very scared. And that's going to look like this messy process. So, yeah, I hope that that resonates. I hope that there is something here for you. I am going to carry on with this trajectory of trying to show up, to be seen and be honest about my process and delve into more stories about what it means to be in conversation with the divine. I think today I spoke to you about the voice inside of myself that spoke to me. I've spoken to you about how the ancestors can come through us through some of the fears that we have, like the deep phobias. I am one of the I am by showing up here just on this podcast, but who knows what's can open up from that. I am my ancestors' wildest dreams because so many of them wanted to be seen and they didn't get this opportunity. And the fear that has been instilled in me from not just my lifetime and the way that I grew up. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that feeling of not self-abandoning, of noticing how good behavior earns smiles and bad behavior is punished, right? And bad behavior wasn't even bad at that time. It was just an expression of self. And we're adults now. If you're listening to this, I hope you're adults because I've put it's not responsible for children, not for children. But we are adults now and we get to be the people that witness ourselves. We get to be the people that dictate what is good and what is bad behavior. And I no longer want to be at mercy to the stories from outside myself. Because right now, this feels good. This is where I want to be. So this is who I'm going to keep showing up for. So thank you for attending this funeral for the good girl inside of myself. I'm sure as we lay her to rest, she will come back with such an abundance of wisdom as she joins as she's composted into the psyche and becomes nutrients for everything that I'm going to become in this world. Thank you so much for listening. Episode 2 of Behind the Sacred, the eulogy of a good girl.